Everybody, welcome back to the Insiders Lounge. Today we have another special guest. John, thanks for joining me, and feel free to give yourself a quick introduction.
Yeah, hey everyone, my name's John Bello. I am a former soccer youth coach, right? I grew up in the soccer world, basically playing since a young age in South Florida, and then got into it post-college after playing directly into coaching, sort of grew up. My professional pathway has sort of always been in that realm, whether it's coaching, whether it's analysis, whether it's individual coaching on both the performance side and on field. And then now working in a totally new space with trying to help people break into and build their careers in the sport. So that is the short, condensed version of my background, but that's kind of who I am in a nutshell. I'm also the father of two young boys living down here in Charleston, South Carolina. I've been married over 10 years already at my young age. So I've had a really nice life down here.
You've definitely done a little bit of everything, especially in the footballing world. But we'll get more into it. Let's start with your early life. Playing as a kid, did you grow up playing, and what were your first kind of footballing experiences like?
Yeah, so I was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and moved to Florida or South Florida when I was 7 years old. So naturally, growing up in the northern part of the country, you want to play hockey or American football. That was like my dream. So we moved to South Florida. My older brother played for like this local football league. I was at every practice. I knew every play, and that's what I wanted to play. And my dad took me to sign up for what I thought was flag football, actually was soccer. So I went to my first practice sort of against my own will, and I'll never forget, probably the moment I actually fell in love with the game was in that practice. It was at Sarasota Football Club. We were in this little parking lot on the grass, playing 7v7 or whatever. And I saved this ball. I kicked it up the line with my left foot, and this realization that I could make this ball do something or manipulate it that I wanted it to do. I was like, this is the coolest thing ever with my feet. So I thought that was really cool. So that's kind of when I fell in love with the game, and I've been playing ever since.
We connected at the coaching convention. I guess it's 2 weeks ago, and we were mentioning how you grew up in Sarasota, and I've had some time down there. The fields are just incredible. I've grown up in Canada. Most of the fields are like cow pitches because they're frozen half the year. It is a totally different level. And then obviously you have IMG Academy. There's some different level pitches down in Florida.
Yeah, I mean, usually they're open too. Even the public fields were good. I mean, in the North, I never knew turf existed until I actually moved to the Northeast. I was like, what is this? So I grew up playing on Bermuda grass, whether it was good or not, it was still soft. And I just thought that was the normal surface to learn how to play on. So yeah, definitely spoiled in that sense because it was nice on my joints until I got to, older ages.
And then we'll get into the college side of things. So I want to make sure I get this right. You have your Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology and Exercise Science.
Yep.
And then did you end up playing college soccer as well? And then let's get into kind of your college experience on the soccer side, but also educationally.
Yeah, no, I played Division I College of Charleston in Charleston, South Carolina. So that's my alma mater. I played there for 4 years, and that was awesome. I think I didn't really decide my undergraduate pathway till probably my sophomore or junior year was sort of when I made the commitment to go into that. With the original intention, probably I would work in something related to physical fitness. I'm really into the gym and things of that nature. So I just wanted to learn about the human body as much as possible. And that track allowed me to do that in a lot of different ways, whether it was practical hands-on in a lab or whether it was more scientific-based research. There was a lot that kind of went into that I really, really enjoyed and didn't really know that it would apply to my career coaching, but I was really into that, thought I would go a totally different trajectory. So the college experience was fantastic. I loved playing there all 4 years that I played. I was a team captain for 3 years, so I was in a unique position of leadership. That was kind of cool that I got to really have unique conversations with the coaching staff that maybe not everybody on the team was privy to have. So those experiences, I think, really helped shape me as I moved into my postgraduate work.
You mentioned how, the captaincy really reflected in your later career. On the educational side, I always like to hear what the influence of that degree and the learnings you had in college have influenced what you're doing now. Because over time, you worked, we'll get into it in scouting and analysis. You've worked in academies, and now you're working in the sports industry, but not for a specific club or something. So it's a little bit different. How has that evolved over time, the learnings from your college days?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know how it would apply. What I figured out though, as I got into the higher levels of licensing, you started to see the wave of performance work really integrating into like the annual, the monthly, the weekly, the daily cycles of planning and execution of training sessions. A lot of people think it's just like you go out there and lay some cones down without any real intention, and you do a rondo or a possession exercise or whatever. It's not. There's so much more detail that goes into it because we started having to go through our courses of physical periodization planning throughout a year, throughout cycles, whether we're preparing players for core events at different times of the year, whether it's preseason, whatever it might be. And then individually, you have, players develop at different rates, especially when you're working at the youth level. And then you also have to be mindful of how players are growing and when they're in growth spurts. So all of the things that sort of kind of relate into energy systems development, physical maturation rates, things of that nature, that all played into how I planned a year. And so having that foundation and that background and that education actually really helped me learn and execute that at a high level pretty quickly because I was just genuinely interested in that content.
And then I think you got also a lot of the general, like your work ethic, being in the college environment and that high pressure environment. I think that can translate to working in clubs, and especially even now as well, where if you are in those intensive moments, you can kind of calm down and focus on what you need to do.
I think you can it's interesting where you start in terms of coaching. I started working with youth players at a young age, probably like the 12, 13, 14 age group. And that actually was a really interesting one because they're going through so much like development mentally and physically during those ages and at different rates. And so you have like some 8th grade boys who were like 6 feet tall already. Yeah. You had some that were 5 feet and tiny, and they're all friends with each other, but they're all doing different things, but they're all the same age. So it's how you actually learn then to take what I know from my experience, craft and develop relationships with those players and foster those to help them get to where they want to get to. That took a lot of time for me to figure out, and I made a lot of mistakes. So I think that was really eye-opening for me, that not everybody had the same mentality that I had. There were kids that lacked self-confidence. There were kids that, were smaller than others, so they were insecure. Like learning how to deal with those intricacies of being a coach is challenging to learn. Some of it only happens through experience and good mentorship.
And I think becoming a good coach is almost like becoming a good father, really. You start to learn every child's different in their own capacity, and you have to learn and adapt and grow with them in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a father now, and I really...
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
Well, I have probably some impatience at times with I'm like, why is he misbehaving like this? I wouldn't do this. But then you got to remember that he's 3, like my oldest is. So you got to kind of come back to meet him where he's at and accept that the emotions that he's expressing are totally normal because he doesn't really know how to process them yet and doesn't know how to ask for things. So it's this two-part game of trying to really be patient and understand that and then help grow them the right way,
Yeah, definitely. And then we'll transition from the college side into your first roles in the football industry. What was that transition like coming out of college?
Probably really similar to what a lot of people kind of do, just pick up my first team with coaching. I started out of the industry actually working in insurance, and then had started playing men's league and really had this kind of something was missing type feeling. And I knew I wanted to work with players young, with children growing up and sort of the adolescent years, and kind of help foster those players growing up. But I didn't really know how to step into that. And I think when I first started coaching, it was just, let me just get in charge of a team and get out there and start doing work. So that was I basically started volunteering with DC United Academy and their camps and training programs for several months, got around the other staff members. I shadowed other staff members that were working with the real academy teams in the older age groups to see how they worked and how they did things. And then, post the first summer that I was kind of working in their camp program, a position opened up and I was naturally in the right place at the right time. And I just said yes. I was only working camps and I had already left my other job. So from an income standpoint, I was like, yes, I'll take it. I need the money. But that was my first job. And it was a challenging one, man. That was the age group that I took over was a U13 team. and there were 2 teams within it. So they had 2 pools of players. So I was in charge of 48 players. It was crazy.
Wow.
It was insane. Yeah.
So then, you became the U15 coach. You were the residential program manager, and then the director of scouting for the academy. What were some of those different roles like, and some of the responsibilities that you had entwined with each one?
Yeah, no, they naturally sort of kind of come about as you, like, well, put it this way, academy life, you end up wearing multiple hats within that. That's probably true for almost every academy. You're not just an academy coach. Within your team itself, you wear a lot of hats as a psychologist, for example, as well as a coach. But inside the academy, I had other interests too, I was in positions to kind of like at the right time to help grow. So I had a really a large interest in scouting. There wasn't really a direction with that program. So they just let me kind of take charge of it at one point. That was great. So I built that from almost nothing to, at one point, I think we had close to 7 or 8 volunteer scouts working with us. I had a couple of paid scouts working with me, and we really built that program up to really try to get out there. And the residential program was another one with just unique timing, and I could add it sort of into my layers of responsibility. And I had an interest in actually kind of seeing what a program was like being built from the ground up. And we had a partnership with a private school out in Southern Maryland that had amazing facilities. And that the first class that I brought in, I think had 14, 15 players that kind of came into that. And it sustained for some time. I'm not sure if it's still going on anymore, but it was a really great experience to learn not just like program development, but also like the recruitment side of things and trying to get the players, from different parts of the country to come in. There was different elements to it that I thought were really interesting. So I learned a lot from both of those experiences, and just tying that into my coaching. I was really well-rounded in a lot of ways. I wouldn't say a master of anything yet, but just like I knew kind of coming out of there, though, it gave me enough scope that I was like, hey, I really want to spend time doing like this and this now, because I've kind of seen a lot.
I think it's similar to college, where you sometimes have to take those classes. You're like, oh, I don't really want to go and listen to that. But then it gives you that general idea of, okay, I don't want to do this, so now let me focus here. And then I really wanted to focus on the scouting side, because that's a personal interest of mine. What got you into, like, how did you figure out you were interested in because a general football fan goes, oh yeah, I like watching football, whatever it is. But the scouting is much different. And where'd you find that interest?
It all probably originated from us having internal discussion on players within DC United Academy in the first place, where we would have meetings and say, these players are like kind of grouped here in terms of like their trajectory. These ones sort of here, these ones here. Okay, what do each of these groups need? And it was fascinating discussions. And my curiosity was always like, well, who found these players in the first place? And what did they see in them when they saw them that attracted them to like recruit them to come into the academy there? So naturally you just start asking questions, and I get curious on things. I start asking. And then through some of the other like partnerships that we sort of had established just in the area, or other coaches that I knew who were doing scouting work in different parts, you just have conversations of, hey, like, what are you guys looking for when you're watching a 12, 13, 14-year-old player? How do you prioritize what you're looking at, right? What could be predictive of that a player may actually succeed in an academy environment, number one, and then maybe even to make a jump to a first team and actually play first team football. So those were just fascinating questions to me. So that's why I got really interested and into it. And when they offered me to kind of take charge of that and create systems and processes that we could then use to make it a better process or scouting process for us, then that was totally interesting to me. And that's how I got into it.
And then you moved later on into a position. I can see the jersey behind you there with the U.S. men's national team. What was it like working with the federation? And you had some good experiences. You were with the CONCACAF Nations League, the Gold Cup, and then the World Cup as well. What were some of those different tournaments like working alongside them?
I mean, they're fascinating, right? It's the preparation for them is one thing. It's just a massive beast to get it all kind of put together and get your minds wrapped around what's to come, right? But I mean, the experiences there, I think some of them you just never forget, right? I mean, the unique game moments that happen, or, some of the presentations that I gave that I won't forget just because of things that happen within the presentation, both good and bad, right? So it was like some things you don't get right. So I think there's just a lot of memorable moments and a lot of learnings. Here's what I appreciated about being with the national team probably the most is just from my personal growth and development was that you have very intense periods of work where you go in and you're in camp, it's all in, right? And you come home and you kind of have a little bit more normal life. It's not the day-to-day weekly grind of, first team football for an MLS team, for example. So what it did do a good job, and Greg was always really good post-camp to give us some time. Like, hey, take 3-4 days, rest of this week. We'll meet up next Monday and we'll debrief together as a staff. But that gave me time to just like shut down, download my brain, write my thoughts and my notes out. And, me and my mentor within that staff, BJ Callahan, we would have our own little debrief on our processes for analysis every single time we got done with a camp. And we'd be like, let's, stop using this, start doing this, or improve like this, kind of like that stop, start, continue exercise. And those were great moments to just like learn. And I think that I took away a lot of processes from that experience with the national team that I use in my, everyday life now. So I think without that experience and sort of learning that and seeing that at that level, I probably maybe wouldn't be doing those things now.
And we'll get into the beast you're working on now, Pathway. Can you give a quick introduction on what Pathway is, and then we'll get into some more questions?
Yeah, I mean, Pathway, the mission statement of Pathway is helping ambitious professionals break into and build careers in soccer. And that's at the core ethos of what we want to do is that. And it's both not just for sporting positions on the technical side, but all like team side, but also the front office side as well. And I think everything that we've sort of built off of that mission statement goes back to that. And that's the thing that drives us forward every time. So, what our original idea was, let's just build a community of professionals first who really want to work in the sport and have strong passion for it. Like to work in the sport, you need the passion thing. That is like it could be a grind. That's the truth. You got to love it. You got to really want to do it. And we wanted to take our combined 40 years of experience working in the sport between me and my two other partners and relay what we learned over that time period back to those who are either trying to break in for the first time or have established careers and are trying to pivot in, or those that are probably 7 to 8 years into their journey, but like are trying to figure out the next step, And I think what we've learned in the process of writing our newsletters to start, which was our starting point to facilitate the building of this community, is that there's a huge desire for this kind of content. We have so much interaction and feedback from the subscribers. That's been amazing because we have a really good loop set up where they do reach out to us constantly and consistently. And then now we can sort of start to iterate and build, different platforms or services on the back end that can serve both the job seeker, but also the employers that are coming to us and asking for support.
Yeah, we'll get into some of those collaborations later. But let's get into, you mentioned the mission statement, but what was the real reason behind founding it? Like, where were some of those initial ideas brought up? And then let's get into your role as well within the organization.
Probably for me specifically, we did, my partner Nolan and I, we did a search or helped Austin FC with an analyst search last, I think it was June. They were they had a need to bring in somebody to fill a hole rather quickly. They were quite tied up with getting prepared for Leagues Cup and with the season going on because the schedule was super heavy leading into Leagues Cup. And so we just kind of came in to help them out over a week-long period. And it opened up our eyes of like the process of how talent is found. And one, found, but then two, how it's evaluated, and then sort of like how you basically elevate the best candidates within that process, right? So, we basically opened up the application portal, and there was like, I think 220 applications. And we're looking at this thing, and I was like, all right, where do we start with this? He's like, well, why don't you start at A, I'll start at Z, we'll meet in the middle type thing, Like, let's just start to read through these and see what stands out. We were trying to figure out a good process for it. There really wasn't a great one. So, we ended up going through it and just realized how time consuming things were and how inefficient it was. And we thought there has to be a better way. And that's when we really started asking questions about the industry as a whole of how do teams go find talent in the first place? Are they building talent pipelines? Because in football, things happen all the time. People leave, new departments are created, whatever happens, like coaches are fired, like things happen. So how are they backfilling things to like fill a pipeline of talent that's ready to roll? And then we started talking to job seekers and we're saying, what are your struggles? Where are you guys really like, do you feel lost? Do you feel like in a sea of applicants applying? Do you just feel like, and you get no feedback back, you just kind of putting it out into the void of space, your resume. So we heard all these things and we were like, there's got to be something sitting in the middle between these two. And then just upon further research, there really wasn't that much. So we thought, well, solving a problem for both sides of the coin here, of this marketplace, and then projecting forward with the growth of the sport in the United States with major tournaments coming in the next 3-4 years, that the amount of jobs being created in football is just going to increase. So we thought it was a really good time to join that, kind of create this marketplace and start to become a leader in the space. And I think that's kind of what really motivated us to do it. We just saw an opportunity.
And then now with Pathway, where is your role in with the company?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, we put titles on us as CXO and COO, but I mean, we're founders. So it's like we do a bit of everything, we try to get it all done. So part of it is content writing. We have 2 weekly publications that we put out. We do split up. It's not just one person writing the content. So we split up recording interviews, editing interviews, developing content for Do This Now, which is a feature of our newsletter where we try to give actionable tips and advice to readers. And that is not easy for someone who's probably been in coaching for the past 12 years of his life. Learning how to write. English was not my strongest subject in college or middle school or high school. So there's growth and a lot of learning on my part that's happening. And then also the business side of things. Like we're launching a community from the ground up, but we also want to build this into a company, a real company. So I think there's that side of things too that we're learning to do. So there's a lot of daily meetings, a lot of daily conversations, a lot of different tasks that could jump from content writing to business development to outbound marketing, to things of that nature. It can kind of go in a lot of different directions. So it change every day, man.
Yep. No, I get it. Working in startups, you're a man with many hats, similar to, I think, your time, like you were saying, at DC United, where you're just kind of filling in the holes wherever your services are needed. And then you figure out what you're doing for that day.
Yeah. And my I operate a lot on systems and processes. And I think that's why I'm sort of been tagged as a COO, because basically processes that we're like going through, I'm documenting and I'm creating those things the plan would be to bring in other people down the road that can help run this, or good operators that can help run this business with us.
So you mentioned, I guess, the first time you worked with Austin FC when you were doing the collaboration to find the analyst. That was, I guess, as an independent role, right? You hadn't started Pathway yet?
Yeah, we hadn't started Pathway yet.
And now you're working with Austin FC in collaboration for a new position. Do you want to speak on that? And then maybe some future collaborations you can see in the future, or where you see that expanding to?
Yeah, part of what starting with the newsletter and building a community of like really ambitious professionals is quite interesting, because one, it's appealing to, employers like clubs or organizations. But two, we have the flexibility to be a little bit different. We're not like just a job board that you post the job posting on. And we can be different in terms of the content that we create around the job description. We can go and do like direct sends to our subscriber base, or we could do social campaigns and really amplify and promote it, either within our community, or hopefully, those tentacles of our community stretch out further just by those people sharing it within their direct network. So it's sort of it's a different way of sort of thinking about it, as opposed to just like a centralized job board where it gets posted and then they post it on their social channel within their direct market. Because sometimes a lot of like hiring someone within their direct market for any club is interesting, but also there's a lot of people who are willing to relocate and move out there, and they're talented. So how do you get in front of those people? So Austin came, we collaborated with them starting in December, just with this idea of doing a campaign that was a little bit different than a traditional one. We were working directly with the marketing department because they had 8 roles at the time, really, that they were promoting or wanting to promote. And then they were gracious enough to do a test with us where we could source candidates specifically for one position. So it was a project marketing manager role. And we took in candidates into our application system. And then we did a vetting process, or layers of vetting, and then hand delivered the most elevated or the most quality candidates that we found to them that they could take further into their process, which they're still in right now. So it was been a really worthwhile collaboration for us to just learn and figure out, is this a potential solution that could work and clubs would be interested in? But the best part about it is it's open more dialogue, because now I have something very tangible that I can show other clubs that we've done, and I have the data that's on the back end to show them where I think it can help solve problems that they have right now. So it's been a fantastic like opportunity to work with them. And going forward, I think other clubs will be interested in different various aspects of that scope that I just described. Not everybody will be the same. So I think it just depends on what their needs are.
And then you were mentioning kind of this fresh approach. I think that's the coolest part of it. Everyone's used to the regular boring, oh, you apply for a job, you don't hear anything back, and it's kind of just this never-ending cycle until maybe something comes up, where you've kind of taken a new angle on it. You've built this community, you have the newsletter, you're helping guide even those that might not necessarily be involved in finding a position through you, but they might be able to help update their LinkedIn or find a better way to write emails. So you have all these different new ways of doing things. Do you have other ideas besides what you already have now that you can maybe speak on, some ways of expanding or starting new projects?
Yeah, I mean, we have some things coming down the pipeline. Probably I can't speak about it just at the moment. Be a little bit too early in the development stage. But yes, I think our whole idea then is to like find the best candidates, elevate the highest quality potential, and then get them connected with clubs. And so we're going to have mechanisms of ways to do that coming up, because we know that that's like the biggest issue that happens for clubs is they put their job out into these channels, and what they get in return, if you look back at like probably the percentage of quality candidates that are applying that actually meet the requirements or even the minimum requirements to fill the role, is small. So the ROI on their post is not strong. And so what we want to do is say, okay, like let's build like this community of actual quality candidates for these positions, and it will increase their chances of like just interviewing better people faster, right? So to a degree, that's what we really want to kind of get to. And I think we're working towards that right now.
Yeah, it makes that filtering process just much easier. And then that in turn, like you were mentioning on ROI, is much better. We'll speak on the day-to-day. You mentioned you have many hats that you're kind of contributing to now under Pathway. But what's a day in the life of John look like right now?
Yeah, we have things that are like cyclical each week, obviously, with the newsletters on Wednesday, Friday. So the preparation for those, depending on my involvement in writing any piece of content or editing interviews, can be large or not. So, Monday and Tuesday in large part are spent preparing our plans for the week of what we're going to target, both from an outbound marketing standpoint, cross promotions, things of that nature. But a lot of it's tied to the newsletters that are going out. So I would say it's every day is different, I guess I would say. That's the best way to describe it, but there are some standard operating things that happen each week as it relates to that. But I think that's, as we grow and scale and we as founders sort of fall more into the lanes that we're going to like really sort of manage and take over, that will be it. And part of that for me is reaching out and making connections with hiring directors and HR directors within the major leagues of MLS, NWSL, USL, like just trying to do some outbound saying hello and introducing myself. So I think it's a part of my time is spent doing that as well. So it's a little bit of everything.
And then I think related to that, I sort of asked this question to anyone that is a father or a parental role. What's the balance like working? The sports business industry can be super time consuming. What's the balance like between that and also having to father kids? I think that can be a difficult balance. How do you manage that balance?
If I'm being really honest, I actually talked to a couple of younger analysts about this yesterday. With my experience probably with the national team, this is just me personally, I had a hard time like putting work here and my personal life here and not blending the two. And the most of that was just because I can't turn off thinking about it. Like I'm always just thinking about it. And that was like an issue for me personally, right? With the work I'm doing now, I'm super passionate about it, but I have a better ability to, I think, turn this off. And I think it's, the stakes are just a little bit different on each of them, right? I mean, national team, we're preparing for major competitions. It's big stuff, man. And that was like, that kind of weighs on you. So naturally I wanted to just uncover everything I could possibly uncover and get ahead wherever I could possibly get ahead. And the other part of it now as a founder is, the stakes are a little bit different, is you have to make money, and you have to sustain a life for your family and help support that. So, and grow a business. And if you don't do anything and you don't act, it doesn't grow. So the stakes are a bit different. You still have to move, but I do find it, being in control of my own thing, I have a better balance, like being able to pick and choose when I can shut things off and when not. So, both careers were rewarding in different ways. I think it's totally possible to work within the sports industry and create that blend of both lives. But don't blur the lines, I would say. You know what I mean? It's that's the key thing there.
I think the nice thing with Pathways, you're working within the sports industry, but you're almost just connecting the dots in the industry. So you almost have a bird's eye view of it. You don't have to be fully ingrained in it, where you're in a club working day to day, and there's that stress that's a constant working and trying to achieve a goal, where you still have those startup stresses. But I think once you can build it past that stage of being a so-called startup still, then you have that balance, and you can kind of just slowly teeter the little things that make that day-to-day so stressful.
Oh yeah. I mean, 100%. And that's what we're working towards. I think, it's not talked about enough, really working on actually in the team environment or in that side of the industry, like the challenges that come up. And I actually think one of the benefits of working and being in the position that I'm at now is the mentorship and the career development advice that I can give younger people who are building their careers in the sport of hey, you're not thinking about this now, but this is going to come up. At some point, you're going to have a significant other. At some point, you're going to want a family. You might be 26 now and young and hungry, but when you're 32, 33, you're going to be thinking about getting married probably, or something like that. So your life priorities are going to change. So it's not that they have to pick and choose one or the other. It's just to be cognizant that that's happening and establish really good communication parameters at home, like how they communicate with their loved ones. And I think that is super important, that that's all done really well. And you can build a really great life in the sport then. I think I've seen so many people do it the right way, and then I've also seen it not happen the right way. So I think it's totally possible.
Yeah, what are some of those other ways? You've worked with DC United, you've worked in many different organizations, and you've had sort of quite a few different roles in those organizations. What are some of those ways that you can now mentor people and give advice, because you've had that career and now you're almost sitting on, like I mentioned before, on that bird's eye view where you can see the industry and you see these young professionals kind of growing into it, and then you're there able to give advice. So what are some of those ways that you can do that?
Well, I mean, people reach out all the time just to chat and connect, and I give away as much time as I possibly can, recognizing I don't have a ton in the first place, but it's, I do make time for it. I really do, because I do believe in the power of having someone who's walked in the steps that you want to walk in, give you advice on stuff that they wish they would have known probably when they started. And I think it's been eye-opening to me, the questions and the maturity level of some of these young, up-and-coming, rising people in the industry have. They're really being thoughtful about it and want to do things the right way. And I'm always open to making myself available to doing that. So we've done it through Pathway, through career development sessions that, we have with one-on-ones that me, Nolan, and Cal both do. We do it with our thought leaders that come on to our newsletter, either through AMA-style meetings in a group or even one-on-one mentorship. And that's probably, we think about mission statement and rituals. One of our rituals is mentorship. And that's what I think people keep coming back for, is the opportunities to speak with us, to speak with thought leaders, to share stories. I think that is a key part of what we do.
And then we'll get into some of the I call them the Insiders Lounge favorites. I like to ask them to each guest. The world of soccer is an incredible roller coaster. We've spoken about it now. You have these crazy highs and lows, and it's kind of back and forth. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've had so far in your career that you've been able to either overcome and now they help you on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's funny. I thought about this question when you said it over. The first thing, honestly, was developing my own voice, my coaching voice. And I think what you naturally do when you start working as a coach is imitate what you know. And so I just imitated my coaches from my youth time. That's all I knew, right? And we're old school. So yeah, maybe not the best in some regards, but
especially for kids, for young kids.
But learning how to how to like bring energy to a session and like really engage players and prime their mindsets and maintain high levels of standards and all those things. I really had to learn how to do all that and be like an authoritative voice within the group to lead young men, right? And that was a challenge for me at first. That ties into really then the how you develop relationships with players and how you maintain those. So like that was really important too. That was a challenge that I didn't really see probably my first 3 years in coaching. That was kind of really flying under my radar. So then I just pivoted to really put emphasis on connecting with players both at a group and individual level and spending the time to do that. And then probably the last piece of it is just feeling like you don't belong somewhere. That is, for me, probably like as I went from working with youth players into the national team, that was probably my immediate thought was, why should I be here? Like, I didn't play pro. I didn't coach pro. Why would these guys listen to me? And I think like overcoming that, there are different ways that you could do that, right? But ultimately realizing that the player group there was so appreciative of the work that you would put in behind the scenes to make sure that they had what they needed to go execute on game day. You just learned that it's just, we're together. This isn't like them sitting on some pedestal and you're just the little analyst down here. You know what I mean? It was a group going in the same direction and we're all on board. So once you overcome that, I think it's a beautiful thing.
And then we'll get into some advice. So you've obviously had these many different roles that we've spoken about. You've been in the industry for a good amount of time now. If someone's looking to break into the sports business industry, do you have some advice for someone like that?
Yeah, I think I've heard it a couple different ways too, probably in the past since we started Pathway. I think one of the things that I kind of think about though is like is dream big a little bit. Like have a little bit. I like that. Have some ambition, like really, no, seriously. I think it's awesome. I think to like speak things out loud that you want to do. That's one thing. It's one thing to say it in your mind, but it's the other thing to actually talk about it. And then all you do then is you can just deconstruct a path, even though it's not going to be perfect, but you can start to deconstruct steps of how you're going to get there, or connections that you need to make to position yourself to get to that spot, right? So if I wanted to be an academy coach at an MLS team, and that was my goal, I would just start to kind of figure out the steps to kind of go do that, whether that's connecting with a couple of their academy coaches, connecting with an analyst in their academy, whether that's trying to talk to their president or academy director and express my interest and ask about how the vision of their academy and ask really thoughtful and intelligent questions just to get on their radar and them to start to remember my name. And then the other part is just showing up. It's just like be the guy that will actually show up at the field and volunteer time to be around and get your face known and be useful. I think that is like, that's like a lot of people think it should just be handed to them. And I grew up in an age group or like at an era where it was like, dude, we didn't have like all this social stuff and things like that. You took what you could get on the table and you just did the work, and that's what I did to break into the sport. So I think it's kind of two parts. It's like deconstructing from like your ambition and what your goal is, but then also just really willing to roll your sleeves up and just get out there and do work.
You mentioned that dream big mentality. Do you have a mentality where you look into the future and you set goals, or are you more someone that just works in the present and focuses on the now?
It's like philosophically a very hard question for me to answer. Yeah. I'll give you the reason why. Because 2021 started, right? And like January 2021, I got a phone call from somebody saying, "Hey, the national team's interested to speak to you," through like a mutual connection. And if I had started that year thinking that I was going to end up working for the national team and then eventually going to a World Cup in 2022, I probably would have thought you were insane. And so it was really hard for me to like think 5-10 years down the road of what things are going to be, because that happened so quick. And then I realized like, yeah, like I want to win the World Cup. Like that's my goal. Like that's what we're doing this next 2 years, guys. Like this is it, and everything we did was working towards us winning that tournament. And I love that. It was amazing. It's just having this like ultimate goal. And, we had steps deconstructed of how we were going to get there, and we would achieve those things and start to tick the boxes off. And that's when it started to get really exciting, was just like getting there and being like, we're finally here. We finally have a shot to do this. And then coming out of that, it was, all right, the next goal or ambition that I have now is to start my own company. And I know that will take a couple years, naturally it's going to take time to get it to where we want to get it to. So that's the next thing that that I'm operating in, is working towards that ambition.
So do you think you could set like more generalized goals on more like yourself versus like a career goal, because you have these switches of like opposition analyst to startup and founder? Like that's two totally different positions. Do you think you can set more on like the personal side for you of like looking ahead? Okay, in 5 years, this is how I want to be in terms of a family matter, or how I want to be working, my lifestyle, that type of thing?
Definitely. I think those are things that I build the present with that as my, and like intentionally with that as being my focus. So I have a goal of having 2 young boys that I want to be able to coach their peewee teams or whatever they do, or be around it and see their games. And I want to be there on the weekends when they need to. So I'm going to build a company with all that in mind, and that not be the other way around, you know?
Definitely. Let's get into some quick fire questions here. I always like to end it off on a fun note. Your favorite club growing up, did you have one? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 clubs. One's Man United, because I was literally the only team that would put on TV in the late 90s. And then in 1997 to whenever they folded, the Tampa Bay Mutiny. That was my squad, because I was from Sarasota, and man, I loved going to those games. That was the best.
Man United was the same for me in Canada. You were only getting one channel or so watching football, and it was Man United. And then I realized very early on that this was not a good road to go down. So when Gerrard slipped, that's when I decided to support Liverpool for some reason. I don't know what was. 10-year-old me was a little bit insane, but we'll get into the next one here.
Well,
your favorite?
Well, I gotta say on that.
Go ahead.
I gotta say on that though, man, that era of Man United was incredible, and the players that they had in the '90s were just like ridiculous. My favorite being Eric Cantona. So it's like, I mean, we had like, you guys, you young cats will think this is crazy, right? But we had Eurosport, which is now Soccer.com. Eurosport was a magazine that you'd get in your mailbox once a month, and I would go to the back. And I would scroll to the back, and they had videos. You could buy VHS tape videos of different things. So I would be looking for like Man United year review, Man United, like Eric Cantona, Ryan Giggs, whatever. And I would buy all these videos and watch them religiously, like Pele's video of skills and tricks. I'd watch it religiously. But that's how we got content and how we got information when I was coming up.
No, I think we grew up in different generations. Mine would have been like Di Maria, Depay on Man United, Van Gaal just come in, and I was looking at this team and I couldn't see it turning around anytime soon. And if I invested like I knew my football teams, I think I would have turned out all right.
Yep.
We'll get into the next one here. Your favorite quote or saying, just something that you live by on a daily basis.
Oh, it's a joke that I have with my wife. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So that's a constant one. I think that's being thrown around our house that makes me pause at times to say, I should be careful how I respond, or I should just be thoughtful here.
No, I think I definitely need to hear that every once in a while.
Yeah.
We were mentioning before, you obviously you grew up in Florida, but now you've moved to South Carolina. What are some of the top recommendations in your area? We can talk about food. I'm a big foodie, or just places that you got to go see.
Well, I mean, I grew up in Sarasota. It was a beach town, so to speak, having multiple beaches with Lido Key Beach, Siesta Key Beach, Turtle Beach down in Venice, right? So I was naturally attracted to Charleston because it has 3 beaches. So Folly Beach, Isle of Palms, and Sullivan's Island. So I would say the beaches here are amazing. It's not the white sand and blue of the Gulf of Mexico, but it's still gorgeous and beautiful. So I think there's something about being around water that I think draws peace to my mind. So I would say visit the beaches there. Downtown Charleston is an incredibly historic city, and the food in the city is amazing. I think it's like barbecue in South Carolina is actually quite good. So there's a couple of restaurants downtown, Lewis Barbecue and Home Team Barbecue, that are quite good. But there's a lot of like really nice restaurants down there. I don't think you could really go wrong.
Definitely. All right, I got to try some barbecue in South Carolina the next time I'm down there.
That's right.
Do you read? Do you have like a favorite book that you're reading at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm actually reading a book called Storyworthy by Matthew Dix. Actually, I'm like halfway into that book right now. That's a really interesting one because I'm just genuinely fascinated with how people present. And it's something that I started probably like in my time with MNT that I really started paying attention to, just because I thought getting up in front of a team and like having a way of working when you present public speaking, like in front of people. I've never been a really comfortable public speaker, especially leading up to the moment. Once I start,
then it's like, yeah.
I'm on. Like I can do it all day. It's no problem. So it's just about like the preparation work and then how they structure stories within how they present is really interesting to me. So Storyworthy has been a great book to read just to like figure out how stories are constructed and delivered. And so that's a really interesting one to check out. The other one that I like really like, and I'll reread it probably, once every year or two, is called Make It Stick. It's the science of successful learning. Again, I'm really interested in how knowledge is transferred between humans and how people ingest and take on new information. And so that is another really interesting one for me too.
I was mentioning with Storyworthy, I was thinking before you were speaking on coaching U13, U14. I think if you can grab their attention and really be a good storyteller, if you want to call it, with them, I think translating that to either the men's national team or just speaking day to day with adults, I think if you can get a 13-year-old to pay attention to you, then you can definitely get someone much older. And I think that was key in your roles.
Yeah, definitely. 100%. I think you got to get them to buy into what the narrative is building up to become, right? So I think it's a fascinating thing, learning how to prime people's minds and get their attention, hold their attention, get them excited about learning things and applying things. It's fascinating work. I love it.
Yeah, it's good, and it's applicable to everything, even outside of the sports business world, if you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll get into, so we're speaking about the sports business world. Is there something you have that can just break you out of work, out of everything, and just focus on something else for a little while, whether it's a favorite hobby, just something to do to enjoy your time?
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I started years ago doing triathlons, and we really like to do that because it would give us like something to train towards. Probably, with her going through, having children the past 3 years or so, she's done it less. I've done it, or I've tried to do it. I keep getting injured by doing stupid things, basically, like playing men's league soccer.
That'll do it.
That'll do it, man. So but I do love like just getting out on the bike, going for a ride. I love going for runs. I've always been a runner and love getting out there. Swimming, that is not my forte at all. I'm not strong at it at all, but that's the part of it that I like. Is actually it's a big challenge for me to get good at, like to become better. So that's probably what I do. And then, from COVID, we actually picked up just walking. I love walking, just going for a walk in nature or on the beach or in our neighborhood with my wife. I mean, those are just great times for me to sort of like check in, shut things down, and, relax.
Yeah, I've been surprised. I've started walking recently. I want to say like 4 miles a day. And it's crazy that like even the muscle growth and the strength you get from walking, you think, oh, it's such a basic exercise, but it's actually so good for you. So I've really been interested in that recently.
My bros from back home or my friends from back home would like cringe if they heard me talking about it, because they're all into lifting and stuff, and they're like, no, dude, you got to do that. But walking is just moving throughout the day. I think it helps.
And then we'll get into the last one here. If you could sit down with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Yeah, I already said it. It's Eric Cantona, 1,000%. This is like the most interesting man in the world to me. Just the way he looks and the way he dresses and his accent. I'm like, this guy would be a great conversation. I don't really know what I would actually ask him besides like just like, why did you pop your collar when you played? Like, I just want to know, like, from you, what's the real reason? He was the only one I ever saw doing it. And there was this arrogance and cockiness about him that I loved. I was just so drawn to it because he played with so much confidence and swag, and I think that era of players in the 90s and kind of early 2000s, like I think 98 World Cup, like some of the players that were in there, like, I mean, they're just like, it's a different era. It's very pure. It's very, very expressive. You know what I mean? And like, I mean, some of that I feel like that's another conversation is a little bit lost on the players of this day and age. It's a lot about athletes and can you run and et cetera, et cetera. But man, those guys were incredible. But he would easily be one that I would really love to sit down with, have a meal with.
Sometimes I listen to his interviews or he does speeches, and I just get lost in listening to him because it's just totally irrelevant to what they were speaking about, but it just sounds so powerful and motivating that I think he gets away with it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he did like I started really liking him too because in that time period where I was watching him play, when he wasn't suspended, it was like he was doing like those Nike campaigns with like the scorpion or whatever. Like they had that secret game. And if you haven't seen that, you're listening, go check that out. It's on YouTube. It was like so cool. And he was like the ringleader of the whole thing. And I was like, this guy is awesome. So yeah.
No, it's great. I appreciate you coming on. Is there any last things you want to shout out or let the audience know, and then we can wrap things up?
Yeah, if you want, subscribe to our newsletter. You go to pathwayhq.com. That's the best way to do that, and just hit subscribe. And at that same time, you can also subscribe to our jobs newsletter, which is a congregation of or centralized place or email that you could receive like the newest jobs in soccer that kind of come out every 7 days. We send that directly to your inbox every Friday. So go subscribe there, and then just connect with us online. I think on Twitter you can, or X now, it's pathway_HQ at pathway_HQ. So just go connect with us there, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I think it'd be great.
Perfect. I'll add all the links below. I appreciate your time for coming on, and hopefully we can speak soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Chad.